Picture a world where the weight of a cowrie shell could seal a marriage, where the face of an emperor stamped on a coin could make an entire empire kneel, or where a string of beads could buy a man's freedom. This isn't fantasy, it's the hidden history of money, a story far richer than numbers on a screen or paper in your pocket. Currency isn't just something we spend. It's a mirror held up to civilization itself, reflecting what we value, who holds power, and how we connect across continents and centuries. From the ancient Mesopotamian shekel, one of the first standardized coins, to the cowrie shells that crossed oceans as Africa's currency, money has always been more than a tool. It's a cultural fingerprint. Think about it. Why did the Aztecs trade in cacao beans, while Pacific Islanders hauled massive rye stones across islands they'd never move again? Why did Roman coins carry the faces of gods and emperors, while Chinese dynasties risked everything to print the world's first paper money? Every choice, every material, every design whispers secrets about the people who used it. Money reveals what they feared, what they worshipped, and how they forged trust in a world where strangers had to find common ground. It's a diary written in metal, paper, and even stone, chronicling wars won, economies collapsed, and empires risen from dust. So let's ask the real question: what if currency isn't just about what we buy, but who we are? This journey will unravel mysteries buried in your wallet's ancestors, from barter systems that predate writing to digital coins that might outlive nations. We'll see how money sparked revolutions, toppled kings, and even shaped art, religion, and daily rituals. And maybe by the end, you'll never look at a dollar bill or a Bitcoin the same way again. Because the story of money isn't just about commerce, it's about us, ready to decode it. Long before coins jingled in pockets or bills filled wallets, people traded stories through objects: bags of grain for clay pots, woven blankets for baskets of fish. This was the barter system, humanity's first experiment with currency, where value wasn't stamped on metal but measured in usefulness. Picture an Aztec merchant holding a handful of cacao beans, their bitter taste less important than their power to buy cloth or tools. Or imagine a Pacific Islander carefully polishing a stone disc, not to wear as jewelry but to trade for a canoe that could feed a village. These weren't just commodities, they were conversations, a way to say, "This is what my labor is worth to you." But barter had a flaw, one so frustrating it would eventually push civilizations to reinvent money. Think of it like this: if you're a farmer with extra wheat and you need a new plow, you must find a blacksmith who not only has a plow but also craves wheat at that exact moment. Historians call this the double coincidence of wants, a clunky term for a simple problem. Trade only works when both people want what the other has to offer. And that was rare. A Mesopotamian potter might spend days searching for someone with spare goats who also needed bowls. Salt, often called white gold, became a universal solution, light to carry, essential for survival, and always in demand. Roman soldiers were even paid in salt rations, a practice so common it gave us the word salary. Yet some cultures turned barter's limitations into art. Take the Fijians, who traded sperm whale teeth tabua as sacred tokens in ceremonies, or the Native American tribes who strung wampum beads into belts using intricate patterns to record treaties. These weren't just trades, they were stories, blending commerce with culture. But as societies grew more complex, the cracks in barter widened. How do you pay taxes in chickens if the king's palace is 3 days' travel away? How do merchants compare the value of a Bolivian silver ingot to a sack of Ethiopian coffee beans? The answer would come from an unlikely place, the fires of metalworkers where lumps of bronze and gold were about to change the world forever. Imagine a currency so heavy it couldn't be carried in your pocket or even lifted by a single person. On the tiny island of Yap in the Pacific, money wasn't something you handed over at a market. It was a colossal limestone disc, sometimes taller than a person, with a hole carved through the center. These were the rye stones, and their value wasn't in their portability but in their story. Each stone's worth came from the perilous journey it took to get there, quarried from distant islands, shaped by hand, and transported on bamboo rafts across treacherous waters. The most astonishing part, when a rye stone changed owners, it often stayed exactly where it was. The entire village simply agreed the ownership had transferred, trusting an oral record more than physical possession. This wasn't just money, it was a shared belief carved in rock. Half a world away, Native American tribes wove wampum delicate beads made from purple and white quahog shells into intricate belts and strings. But these weren't just decorative. A single belt could seal a peace treaty between nations, its patterns encoding messages like a legal document. Wampum carried the weight of promises, with darker beads symbolizing serious oaths and white beads marking moments of joy. European colonists initially dismissed them as primitive trinkets until they realized wampum's power. By the 1600s, Dutch traders in New York were scrambling to acquire wampum, not to wear but to use as currency for trading furs. The beads became so valuable that counterfeiters dyed inferior shells to mimic the prized purple hue, sparking one of the earliest cases of monetary fraud in the Americas. Then there were the cowry shells, tiny porcelain-like treasures that became the closest thing to a global currency before gold. Sourced from the Maldives, these glossy shells traveled along trade routes from Africa to China, their uniform shape making them easy to count. In West Africa, they bought everything from cloth to livestock, even human lives during the transatlantic slave trade, where cowries were used to price captives. But their journey didn't end there. In ancient China, cowries were so revered that early script characters for money and trade were based on their shape. Kings buried them in tombs as offerings to the dead, believing their smooth surfaces carried blessings into the afterlife. What tied these strange currencies together? Durability mattered. A feather might be beautiful, but it couldn't outlast a storm like a stone or a shell. Rarity played a role too. The difficulty of obtaining rye stones or Maldive cowries kept their value high. But the real magic was in meaning. These objects became money because communities decided they were sacred, whether as symbols of trust like Yap stones, carriers of history like wampum, or vessels of the divine like cowries. They turned the ordinary into something extraordinary through collective belief, a principle that still underpins modern money today. Yet for all their cultural power, these currencies had limits. A rye stone couldn't buy a single fish if the fisherman preferred coconuts. Wampum belts took weeks to craft, making small transactions impractical. And cowries, for all their spread, were vulnerable to inflation when European traders flooded markets with shiploads of shells. The solution would come from something far simpler, a lump of metal stamped with a king's face that could fit in your palm and buy a week's worth of bread. But that shift didn't just change money, it changed the world. The moment humans discovered how to shape metal, money stopped being about what you could eat or wear and started becoming something far more powerful. Picture a lump of bronze in ancient China, rough and unremarkable, yet capable of buying a family's entire harvest. These were the first metal ingots, valued not for their beauty but for their weight. A farmer could trade one for a sack of rice today, then melt it down tomorrow to craft a tool. But the real breakthrough came when someone realized metal could do more than just weigh things down, it could carry messages. Enter the Kingdom of Lydia, nestled in what's now Turkey, around 600 years before the Common Era. Here, rulers took lumps of electrum, a shimmering mix of gold and silver, and pressed them with simple marks: a lion's head, a sunburst, a king's insignia. These weren't just pretty decorations. That stamp was a promise, a guarantee that this lump contained a set amount of precious metal, no need for scales or haggling. Suddenly, money wasn't just valuable, it was trustworthy. Merchants from Egypt to Mesopotamia could recognize a Lydian coin at a glance, knowing its worth was backed by a kingdom's reputation. Gold and silver became the superstars of this new system, and for good reason. Gold couldn't be tarnished by time or weather. A coin buried for centuries would still gleam like the day it was minted. Silver, though softer, was rare enough to be precious but common enough to circulate widely. Both metals could be melted, divided, and reshaped without losing their essence, making them the perfect medium for trade. But what truly set them apart was their cultural weight. In societies from the Aztecs to the ancient Greeks, gold wasn't just currency. It was the sweat of the gods, a divine metal that bridged the earthly and the eternal. Coins quickly became tiny canvases for cultural identity. Greek city-states stamped theirs with owls, a symbol of Athena's wisdom, while Roman emperors plastered their scowling profiles across every denarius, turning pockets into miniature propaganda machines. Each coin told a story. The Persian daric showed a king kneeling with a bow, a not-so-subtle reminder of imperial power, while Celtic tribes etched abstract swirls that mirrored their intricate art. Even the size spoke volumes. Chinese knife money was cast in the shape of blades, a nod to the tools that once served as barter items. But this revolution had a dark side. The very malleability that made metals ideal for coins also made them irresistible to counterfeiters. Ancient Rome's economy nearly collapsed when emperors like Nero secretly shaved silver from coins, replacing it with cheap copper while insisting the value stayed the same. It was history's first lesson in inflation. When money stops being backed by real worth, trust evaporates faster than morning dew. The shift to metal didn't just change how people paid for things. It changed how they thought about power, faith, and even themselves. A farmer holding a coin stamped with a pharaoh's face didn't just see money, he saw the state's unblinking gaze. A merchant trading Athenian owls across the Mediterranean wasn't just carrying wealth, he was spreading culture, and when those coins clinked together, they sounded less like currency and more like the gears of empires turning. Yet the most fascinating twist was still to come. Once rulers realized coins could carry images, they discovered something even more potent. Currency could lie. It could exaggerate victories, erase defeats, and make kings look like gods. And as the next chapter would prove, money wasn't just a tool of trade, it was a weapon. A coin is more than metal, it's a conqueror's whisper across centuries. When Alexander the Great stormed across Persia, he didn't just leave behind ruins, he flooded the ancient world with silver drachmas bearing his youthful profile, crowned with the horns of Zeus. These weren't mere payments to soldiers, they were miniature billboards proclaiming his divinity from Egypt to India. Every transaction became a conversation. This land belongs to Alexander. His coins outlived him by generations, circulating long after his death, ensuring that even merchants who'd never seen his face knew his name. The Byzantine Empire took this idea further with the Solidus, a gold coin so pure and consistent it became the dollar of its day. For nearly 800 years, from Constantinople's bustling markets to Viking trading posts, the Solidus held its value with near mythical stability. Sailors in Venice and silk merchants in Baghdad trusted its golden sheen more than local currencies because Byzantium's emperors understood something revolutionary. Money wasn't just economic fuel, it was a cultural handshake. When foreign traders accepted those coins, they weren't just acquiring wealth. They were accepting Byzantine influence, its art, its religion, stamped onto every surface. But power corrupts, and currency was no exception. Roman emperors like Nero couldn't resist tinkering with the recipe. Facing empty treasuries, they ordered mints to secretly mix cheap copper into silver denarii, while insisting the coins retained full value. At first, the public didn't notice until bread prices skyrocketed as trust evaporated. This was inflation in its rawest form, money as a lie wrapped in metal. By the time Emperor Diocletian tried fixing prices with draconian laws, a single pound of gold could buy what 50 pounds once purchased. The lesson was clear: when rulers abuse currency, societies crumble faster than armies can conquer. Yet the most fascinating twist wasn't the scandals, it was how money became a silent diplomat. Along the Silk Road, a Persian trader might pay with a dinar bearing Arabic script, while a Chinese merchant handed over coins stamped with Confucian proverbs. Each transaction became a cultural exchange, spreading alphabets, artistic styles, and even religious symbols. Kushan coins from Central Asia blended Greek gods with Buddhist imagery, creating a visual language that helped missionaries spread Buddhism into China. Money wasn't just moving goods, it was weaving civilizations together, one coin at a time, and then came the paper. Picture a merchant in Samarkand, sweating under the midday sun as he counts out 3 different currencies onto a worn wooden table. A Chinese silk trader insists on silver ingots stamped with Tang Dynasty seals, while a Sogdian caravan master demands payment in Persian dirhams, coins so worn their inscriptions have blurred into ghosts. Meanwhile, a Byzantine official lurks nearby, eyeing the exchange rate for gold solidi. This wasn't just commerce, it was a high-stakes game of monetary hopscotch, played across thousands of miles where no single rulebook applied. The Silk Road didn't just move goods, it forced the world's first monetary mashup, a chaotic dance of coins, ingots, and trust that would reshape economies forever. At the heart of this frenzy was China's most audacious invention, paper money. As early as the 7th century, Tang Dynasty merchants tired of hauling carts of heavy copper coins started using flying cash, handwritten certificates that could be redeemed in distant cities. But the real revolution came under the Song Dynasty, when tea merchants in Sichuan began depositing coins with local banks in exchange for lightweight paper notes. Imagine the shock of a Venetian trader seeing this for the first time. How could something as flimsy as paper hold value? Yet these notes worked because they were backed by something more precious than gold: imperial authority. The Khanate of Persia even adopted the idea, printing notes with threatening inscriptions like "Counterfeiters will be decapitated," a stark contrast to China's elegant calligraphy. Meanwhile, the Kushan Empire, straddling modern-day Afghanistan and India, minted coins that became tiny melting pots of culture. Gold dinars bore the image of King Kanishka alongside Hindu deities, Greek script, and even Buddha himself, depicted with Hellenistic curls borrowed from Alexander the Great's old coin designs. These weren't just payments, they were portable propaganda, announcing to the world that the Kushans welcomed all faiths and traders. A single coin could pass from a Zoroastrian's palm to a Buddhist monk's alms bowl, carrying not just wealth but shared symbolism across continents. Yet the road's true currency wasn't metal or paper, it was trust. When Marco Polo described seeing Mongol officials stamp silk-wrapped bundles of paper with vermilion seals, he marveled that anyone would accept them. But in a world where a merchant might not see his home for a decade, lightweight money was worth the gamble. Some traders even developed their own proto-cryptocurrency, letters of credit called hawala, allowing a merchant to deposit silver in Baghdad and withdraw its equivalent in Delhi using nothing but a secret password and a handshake. The Silk Road's monetary chaos had an unexpected side effect. It forced cultures to confront their deepest biases about value. Arab scholars wrote manuals explaining how to assay suspicious Chinese silver, while Persian moneychangers kept detailed ledgers comparing the purity of Byzantine gold against Indian rupees. In caravanserais from Aleppo to Xi'an, arguments over exchange rates became impromptu seminars in metallurgy, theology, and art. A single transaction might involve weighing coins, inspecting paper watermarks, and debating whether a coin's worn edges still merited full value. But the most enduring legacy was the road's role as an accidental innovation hub. Chinese paper money inspired Persian experiments with block-printed textiles as currency, while Central Asian nomads adapted the idea into leather tokens that could survive steppe winters. Even failures had ripple effects when the Yuan dynasty's overprinted paper notes collapsed in the 14th century. The resulting hyperinflation scared Europe away from paper money for centuries. Yet the genie was out of the bottle. The Silk Road proved that money wasn't just about material, it was about imagination, the collective belief that a scrap of paper or a lump of metal could hold the world together. And that belief was about to be tested like never before, because while the Silk Road had tamed distance, the next challenge would be taming time itself. As dynasties rose and fell, their currencies often died with them. The solution: make money as eternal as the empires that printed it. But that gamble would come at a cost no one could predict. Imagine a world where money could vanish in a gust of wind, or go up in flames with a single spark. That's the gamble China took over 1,000 years ago when the Tang dynasty rolled out humanity's first paper currency. Unlike the heavy strings of copper coins that strained merchants' belts, these new, flying cash notes were light as a whisper. Officials stamped them with intricate seals and serial numbers, turning humble mulberry bark into portable wealth. At first, it seemed like magic. A farmer could sell rice in Chengdu, receive a paper certificate, and redeem it for coins weeks later in Luoyang without hauling a single copper piece. But this innovation came with a perilous flaw: the temptation to print. By the time the Song dynasty refined the system in the 11th century, paper money had become a double-edged sword. The government-backed Jiaozi notes were a hit among Sichuan's tea merchants, who no longer needed armored carts to transport their earnings. Yet as Mongol invaders pressed closer, desperate emperors began flooding the economy with unbacked notes to fund their wars. The result: a crash that would make modern hyperinflation look tame. At its peak, a stack of paper money worth 14,000 coins could barely buy a bowl of rice. Trust had evaporated faster than ink on damp parchment. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Europe clung stubbornly to metal. When Marco Polo returned from Cathay with tales of paper currency, Venetian bankers scoffed. To them, money needed heft: the weight of gold florins between your fingers, the clink of silver groats in a purse. It wasn't until 1661, when Sweden's copper plates grew too unwieldy to transport, that Stockholm's Palmstruch Bank dared to issue Europe's first banknotes. Even then, skepticism ran deep. A German merchant in Riga famously refused a Swedish note, demanding to know why he should trade solid metal for a recipe, a jab at the paper's resemblance to cooking instructions. The divide between East and West wasn't just about materials, it was a clash of philosophies. China's system relied on imperial might, the belief that an emperor's decree could turn paper into value. Europe's resistance stemmed from darker memories, like the hyperinflation of Spanish copper coinage during the Price Revolution, which had taught hard lessons about unbacked currency. Sweden's early notes only gained traction because they were convertible to silver on demand, a lifeline of trust that China's later dynasties had severed. Yet beneath these differences lay a universal truth: all money, whether stamped on paper or metal, is a shared hallucination. The moment people stop believing, it crumbles, whether it's a Ming Dynasty note or a Spanish doubloon. And that fragility would lead to the next great monetary experiment, the gold standard, a system that promised to anchor faith to something as unshakable as the earth itself. But as many would learn, even gold couldn't guarantee stability when human nature entered the equation. Gold promised permanence, a currency as unshakable as the mountains it was dug from. When nations pinned their money to this glittering anchor, they believed they'd tamed the chaos of trade forever. A British pound sterling in 1870 would buy you the same loaf of bread as one in 1890, its value locked to a precise fraction of an ounce of gold. No more emperors secretly shaving coins or dynasties drowning economies in paper. The gold standard wasn't just policy, it was a sacred vow between money and metal, a guarantee that wealth couldn't vanish at a ruler's whim. Yet the system had a fatal flaw: it assumed gold was immune to human folly. Spain learned this brutally in the 16th century, when shiploads of silver from Potosi's mines flooded Europe. Suddenly, there was too much metal chasing too few goods, a textbook case of inflation centuries before economists had the term. Prices for everything from wheat to wool tripled in decades, leaving workers with purses full of coins that bought less than their grandparents' meager wages. The so-called price revolution proved that even precious metals could become dangerously unstable when supply outran demand. The myth of universal adoption crumbles under scrutiny too. While London and Paris obsessed over gold reserves, vast regions ignored the standard entirely. In Ethiopia, the salt bars called amul remained the countryside's preferred currency well into the 20th century. The Yap Islanders still traded their immovable rye stones, and across the Sahel, cowrie shells clung to relevance not because of any intrinsic value, but because centuries of tradition had woven them into the fabric of daily life. The gold standard wasn't a global rule. It was a colonial export imposed by industrial powers on economies that had functioned perfectly well without it. Even its supposed stability was an illusion. When drought ravaged Argentina's farms in the 1890s, the country couldn't print extra pesos to feed the hungry. Gold reserves demanded austerity. Workers starved while warehouses bulged with grain destined for export, because only foreign buyers paid in gold-backed currencies. Meanwhile, in Britain, politicians fretted over dwindling bullion supplies every time a bad harvest forced more gold overseas to pay for food imports. The system's rigidity turned natural crises into catastrophes, handcuffing nations when they most needed flexibility. By the early 20th century, the cracks became chasms. World War I forced countries to abandon gold to fund their armies, printing unbacked money with abandon. Post-war attempts to resurrect the standard only deepened misery. Britain's return to gold in 1925 overvalued the pound, crippling exports and fueling strikes. When the Great Depression hit, the US hoarded gold while ordinary Americans scrambled to turn paper dollars into anything tangible: cans of soup, sacks of flour, even seeds for home gardens. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates to protect gold reserves, strangling the very economy it was meant to stabilize. The gold standard's collapse revealed an uncomfortable truth: money isn't just a measure of value, it's a social contract. When people lose faith, no amount of metal can save it. And as the rubble of 2 world wars smoldered, that contract would be rewritten in ways no one could predict. Governments, no longer constrained by gold, began to experiment with something far more volatile: currency backed not by rock but by promises. War has a way of turning money into wallpaper. In 1923 Germany, children stacked bundles of marks like toy blocks, their faces smudged with ink from counting zeros on bills that lost value by the hour. A loaf of bread that cost 160 marks at breakfast might cost 200 million by dinner. Workers rushed to spend wages the moment they were paid, knowing the cash in their pockets would be worthless by sunset. This wasn't just inflation, it was monetary vertigo, a free fall where the very idea of value collapsed under the weight of war, reparations, and political chaos. The Weimar Republic's presses churned out currency so frantically that factories hired workers just to sweep away piles of discarded bills. Some citizens even burned money for heat, realizing the paper was cheaper than firewood. Yet Germany's nightmare was just one chapter in war's assault on currency. During World War II, Britain rationed not just food but money itself, issuing coupon books that dictated how much meat, sugar, or fabric a family could buy. These flimsy slips became more precious than coins, transforming pockets into miniature filing cabinets. Meanwhile, in occupied Japan, the military issued invasion scrip crudely printed notes meant to replace local currencies across conquered territories from the Philippines to Burma. These bills carried no serial numbers, no guarantees, just the imperial crest as a blunt reminder. Your economy now belongs to us. Strangely, some of war's most resilient currencies weren't official at all. In prisoner of war camps, cigarettes became gold. With no access to banks, Allied soldiers traded hand-rolled tobacco sticks for everything from chocolate bars to handmade radios. A single cigarette could buy a haircut, 20 might secure a forged identity card. This wasn't barter, it was a fully functioning shadow economy, with cigarettes serving as both currency and commodity. Their value came from scarcity, portability, and universal demand, proving that money doesn't need government stamps to work, it just needs collective belief. The war also birthed one of history's most bizarre monetary experiments, the disposable money of D-Day. When Allied forces stormed Normandy, they carried not just guns but millions of specially printed invasion francs currency meant to be used for a few weeks until France was liberated. These notes had no backing, no long-term value, yet French shopkeepers accepted them without question. Why? Because in that moment, trust in the Allies outweighed fear of worthless paper. By war's end, the global monetary system lay in ruins. Gold standards had been abandoned, economies were choked with debt, and people everywhere had learned a brutal lesson. Governments could and would manipulate money to survive. The stage was set for a radical new idea, one that severed currency from anything tangible altogether. No metal, no rules, just the audacious promise that a dollar was worth a dollar because everyone agreed it was. The age of fiat money was coming, and with it, a gamble that would redefine wealth itself. Fiat money is faith made tangible, or at least as tangible as paper and ink can be. Unlike gold coins or silver bars, a dollar bill has no inherent worth. You can't melt it into jewelry or use it to conduct electricity. Its power comes purely from collective belief, the unspoken agreement that this slip of green paper represents something real. Modern currencies are promissory notes signed by entire nations, whispering the same promise: trust us, this is worth something. But that trust can evaporate overnight, as Zimbabwe learned in brutal fashion during the 2008 hyperinflation crisis. At the peak of the disaster, prices doubled every 24 hours. A loaf of bread cost 50 billion Zimbabwean dollars by afternoon, if you could find one. The government responded by printing $100 trillion notes, turning currency into something closer to monopoly money. Yet even those grotesque denominations became worthless faster than vendors could update their chalkboard price tags. People abandoned wallets for wheelbarrows, stacking bricks of cash just to buy a single egg. This fragility exposes fiat money's paradox. It's simultaneously powerful and precarious. When trust holds, it enables economies to flourish without the constraints of scarce metals. Governments can adjust money supply to stabilize markets, fund infrastructure, or combat recessions. But when that trust fractures, whether from political instability, reckless printing, or systemic corruption, the entire illusion crumbles. Venezuela's bolivar followed Zimbabwe's downward spiral, with citizens stitching banknotes into handbags because the material was worth more than the printed value. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, the same fiat system produces one of the world's most stable currencies, the franc, backed by centuries of political neutrality and meticulous monetary policy. The difference isn't in the paper, it's in the institutions behind it. Cultural attitudes toward fiat money reveal deep divides in how societies view authority and security. In India, families have historically hoarded gold jewelry, not just for adornment but as a tangible hedge against rupee fluctuations. During the 2016 demonetization crisis, when the government abruptly invalidated most cash overnight, those gold reserves became literal lifesavers for rural households locked out of banks. Contrast this with Sweden, where cash transactions now account for less than 10% of purchases. Many Swedish businesses refuse physical money altogether, embracing digital payments with near religious fervor. For them, fiat currency isn't about paper, it's about seamless trust in systems, whether Visa cards or mobile swipes. Even within nations, generational rifts emerge. Older Germans, haunted by memories of Weimar hyperinflation and post-war currency reforms, often keep emergency stashes of euro notes under mattresses, a habit that baffles younger Berliners who split restaurant bills via smartphone apps. Americans swing between extremes. Some view the Federal Reserve with suspicion, stockpiling silver coins and Bitcoin, while others blithely swipe credit cards for lattes without a second thought to the complex financial machinery behind each transaction. The rise of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin throws these contradictions into sharp relief. Satoshi Nakamoto's creation was essentially a rebellion against fiat's vulnerabilities, offering money governed by code rather than capricious human institutions. Yet even crypto couldn't escape the trust dilemma. When exchanges collapsed or hackers struck, investors learned that digital trustlessness still required faith in platforms, wallets, and market liquidity. Meanwhile, China's digital yuan presents a mirror image, all the convenience of cashless living, but with the government able to track or freeze every transaction at will. These tensions hint at money's next evolutionary leap. If fiat currency was the audacious experiment that untethered value from physical scarcity, then digital money might be the frontier where currency sheds even its paper skin entirely. But whether that future brings liberation or new forms of control depends less on technology than on the oldest currency of all, human trust. And as history shows, that's the most volatile commodity of all. The cypherpunks of the 1990s dreamed of money that no government could control, a currency born not in a mint but in lines of code. Their manifesto, scrawled across encrypted mailing lists, was simple: privacy, cryptography, and freedom from prying eyes. When Bitcoin emerged in 2008 under the shadow of the global financial crisis, it wasn't just a new payment system. It was a middle finger to Wall Street, a digital rebellion wrapped in complex algorithms. The anonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, embedded a sly message in Bitcoin's first block. The Times 03/Jan/2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. This wasn't random, it was a direct jab at centralized finance, proof that Bitcoin was designed as much for ideological warfare as for transactions. Yet for all its anti-establishment roots, Bitcoin's evolution reveals a cultural paradox. Early adopters treated it like digital gold, hoarding coins in hopes they'd fund a libertarian utopia. But as prices skyrocketed, Wall Street swooped in, turning Bitcoin into just another asset class traded on regulated exchanges, scrutinized by the same institutions it was meant to dismantle. The cypherpunk dream collided with human nature. People still wanted security, convenience, and yes, someone to blame when things went wrong. China's digital yuan offers a stark counterpoint. While Bitcoin thrives on decentralization, the yuan is the opposite, a currency with the government's fingerprints on every line of code. Transactions aren't anonymous, they're meticulously tracked, giving Beijing unprecedented visibility into spending habits. During trials, officials even tested expiring digital cash to encourage timed spending, turning money into a tool of policy. For Chinese citizens, convenience comes with strings, the ability to freeze accounts linked to dissent or flag suspicious purchases. This clash between Bitcoin's anarchic roots and the digital yuan's controlled efficiency forces us to ask, can code carry culture? Bitcoin's blockchain echoes the communal trust of Yap's Rye Stones, where ownership is validated by collective consensus rather than kings. The digital yuan, meanwhile, mirrors ancient Rome's coinage, stamped with imperial authority to remind users who's in charge. Both systems are digital, yet they embody entirely different visions of society. The ethical questions run deep. If money is no longer something you can hold, but lines of data flickering across servers, does it lose its cultural weight? Or does it simply evolve, like wampum belts giving way to silver drachmas? Perhaps the answer lies in Sweden, where cash has become so rare that churches installed card readers for donations and homeless vendors carry mobile swipers. Or India, where the government's sudden ban on high-denomination notes in 2016 left millions scrambling, proving that even in a digital age, money remains deeply human, a mirror of our fears, our politics, and our tangled relationship with trust. As we stand at this crossroads, one thing is clear: the future of money won't be decided by technology alone, but by who controls the narrative. Will it be the cypherpunks, the central banks, or something in between? The next chapter is being written not in ledgers, but in the choices we make every time we tap a phone or send a Satoshi. And like every monetary revolution before it, this one will leave fingerprints far beyond the balance sheet. In Sweden, cash isn't just disappearing, it's practically extinct. Walk into a Stockholm cafe and you'll see signs politely declining crumpled bills, while buskers wave QR codes instead of hat brims. Over 90% of Swedish transactions now happen digitally, with even children paying for ice cream via smartphone apps. This isn't just convenience, it's a cultural revolution built on unshakable trust in systems. Swedes embrace cashlessness because they believe in their banks, their government, and the invisible infrastructure humming behind every swipe. When a church collection plate gets replaced by a contactless terminal, it's not a gimmick, it's faith in a new kind of sacrament. India's journey couldn't be more different. On November 8, 2016, Prime Minister Narendra Modi shocked the nation by announcing that 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, 86% of India's cash, would become worthless by midnight. The goal was noble: to cripple corruption and push the country toward digital payments. The reality was chaos. Overnight, ATMs ran dry as millions queued for days to exchange worthless paper. Farmers couldn't buy seeds, hospitals refused cash payments, and families stranded without valid bills burned furniture for warmth. The irony: India's informal economy, which relied on cash precisely because people distrusted banks, doubled down on secrecy. Instead of digital utopia, the country saw a surge in gold smuggling and a spike in mobile wallet scams, proof that forced transitions often backfire when trust isn't earned. Germany sits stubbornly in the middle, clinging to cash like a life raft. Despite being Europe's economic powerhouse, over 70% of German transactions still involve physical money. Supermarkets bristle with signs insisting "nur Bargeld," cash only, while privacy laws make it illegal for shops to refuse coins and bills. This isn't just nostalgia, it's generational trauma. Older Germans remember hyperinflation wiping out savings twice in a century, and Soviet-era East Germans recall secret police tracking dissent through bank records. For them, cash isn't outdated, it's freedom, a way to opt out of surveillance. Even as Berlin's tech startups push digital payments, the nation's piggy banks remain stubbornly full. Then there's Kenya, where mobile money leapfrogged cash entirely. In 2007, telecom giant Safaricom launched M-Pesa, a service letting users transfer funds via basic text messages. Within months, Kenyan farmers were paying suppliers with SMS codes, and street vendors accepted phone credits as readily as coins. Today, over 70% of adults use M-Pesa, not because they distrust banks, but because it's faster than walking miles to one. The system's genius lies in its simplicity. It turned every corner kiosk into a makeshift ATM, proving that innovation thrives where necessity meets ingenuity. These contrasts paint a global puzzle. Sweden's cashlessness works because of trust. India's stumble revealed the cost of rushing it. Germany's caution reminds us that money carries memory, and Kenya's mobile revolution shows how technology can rewrite rules overnight. The lesson: currency isn't just about efficiency, it's about identity. When we choose how to pay, we're also choosing who to believe in, what to fear, and how much control we're willing to surrender. And as contactless payments and digital wallets reshape our wallets, one question lingers. In a world where money has no weight, what else might we lose or gain along the way? What if the next great currency isn't mined from the earth, but from the cosmos? Picture a lunar colony where transactions pulse through blockchain ledgers, each digital coin time-stamped by the precise vibrations of an atomic clock on the moon's surface. SpaceX engineers might one day haggle over Martian real estate using tokens backed not by gold, but by the labor hours required to pressurize a greenhouse dome or extract water from rusty soil. In these off-world economies, money could shed its terrestrial baggage entirely. No more central banks, no more inflation debates, just pure algorithmic trust etched into lines of code. Yet even here, culture would creep in. A Mars settlement founded by libertarians might adopt Bitcoin-style decentralization, while a state-sponsored lunar base could mirror China's digital yuan, with every oxygen purchase logged by Earth-bound regulators. Back on our home planet, a quieter revolution is unfolding in places like Greece's TM network, where time itself becomes currency. A graphic designer in Thessaloniki earns credits by teaching Photoshop skills, then spends them later on homemade dolmades from a retiree who traded an hour of cooking for an hour of bookkeeping. This isn't barter, it's a formalized system where 1 TM hour equals 1 TEM hour, regardless of whether you're painting murals or fixing leaky pipes. The system thrives in crisis-scarred communities where euros feel untrustworthy, proving that when traditional money fails, people revert to the most fundamental metric of all: human effort. The TM model echoes older traditions like Japan's Fyori Kippu, where caregivers earn relationship tickets for assisting the elderly, credits transferable to their own aging relatives elsewhere in the country. Both systems expose a radical idea. What if money wasn't about accumulating abstract wealth, but about weaving webs of mutual aid? A TM participant in Athens put it bluntly, "When I fix your plumbing, I'm not just earning credits. I'm investing in the kind of neighborhood I want to live in." Yet these experiments also face stark limits. Try paying your electricity bill with time credits, or buying antibiotics with Bitcoin on a Martian dust storm day. As long as humans need infrastructure, medicine, and interstellar freighters, some form of standardized, scalable currency will persist. The real question isn't whether money will disappear, but whether it can ever escape its role as a cultural Rorschach test revealing what a society values, fears, and ultimately believes in. This tension is already sparking countercultures that reject cash altogether. In rural England, the Bristol pound circulates among local businesses, its paper notes adorned with illustrations of suspension bridges and suffragettes, a deliberate snub to London's financial hegemony. Across the Atlantic, Ithaca's Hours system pays musicians and carpenters with colorful bills that depreciate if hoarded, incentivizing rapid circulation to keep the community thriving. These aren't just economic experiments, they're acts of defiance declaring that money should serve people, not the other way around. The most radical rebels, though, operate outside any system. From squatter communities in Barcelona trading repair work for rooftop garden space, to anarchist collectives in Portland running free stores where everything's pay what you can, these groups treat money like an outdated operating system, something to jailbreak rather than upgrade. Their mantra, "If money is the language of value, let's invent a new grammar." Whether they're utopian dreamers or pragmatic visionaries depends on who you ask, but one thing's certain: their very existence proves that cash, for all its power, is just one chapter in humanity's endless negotiation of worth. And the next chapter might not need wallets at all. In the heart of upstate New York, a plumber named Joe gets paid in tomatoes, not because he's bartering, but because he's part of Ithaca's Hours system, a local currency where 1 hour equals $10 worth of goods or services, all spent within the community. The colorful bills feature waterfalls, farmers, and even local activists, turning every transaction into a tiny act of rebellion against faceless global finance. What started in 1991 as a way to keep wealth circulating locally has become something far more radical. A living critique of how mainstream money leaks out of small towns into corporate coffers. Joe's hours aren't just money, they're a loyalty program for neighbors, ensuring his labor benefits the cafe down the street, not a multinational chain. Across the Atlantic, Bristol's pound tells a similar story with a British twist. These vibrant notes are designed by local artists and accepted by over 800 businesses feature everything from Brunel's suspension bridge to the cheeky graffiti of Banksy. When the currency launched in 2012, even the city's mayor took his salary in Bristol pounds, a symbolic snub to London's financial dominance. But beneath the whimsy lies serious intent. Every Bristol pound spent at an independent bookstore or family-run bakery strengthens a web of local resilience, insulating the community from the shocks of distant stock market crashes. It's anti-capitalist only if you squint. Really, it's hyper-capitalism with a hometown face. These experiments share a DNA with much older traditions, like the Depression-era script printed by struggling American towns when banks collapsed. But modern local currencies add a layer of cultural theater missing from those emergency measures. Ithaca's hours deliberately expire if hoarded, nudging users to spend quickly and keep the economic energy flowing, a direct challenge to the Wall Street mindset of accumulation. Bristol's notes, meanwhile, become collector's items, blurring the line between currency and art. A £5 note isn't just a £5 note when it's screen printed with a tribute to a beloved local DJ. The motivations vary as widely as the designs. Some participants see local money as environmental activism, cutting the carbon footprint of goods shipped across oceans. Others frame it as protest, like the Catalan eco-squatters who issue their own currency to bypass Spanish banks. Then there's the quiet pragmatism of places like Berkshire, where Berk shares help dairy farmers survive in an age of Walmart milk. What unites them is the belief that money shouldn't be neutral, that its very design can encode values from solidarity to sustainability. Yet these systems face brutal headwinds. When Greece's financial crisis birthed dozens of alternative currencies, many withered once euros became scarce again. Even Bristol's pound, for all its charm, couldn't outlast the convenience of contactless payments. The lesson: local money thrives best when it's not just ideological but irresistibly practical, when it offers something big banks can't, whether it's discounts at indie shops or the visceral joy of holding art in your wallet. Which raises a tantalizing question. If money can be canvas, what stops it from becoming pure expression? From Canada's glow-in-the-dark dinosaur coins to Norway's pixelated beach banknotes, currency has always flirted with artistry. But in the hands of intentional communities, it becomes something more, a brushstroke in a larger portrait of how we might reimagine value itself. Money doesn't have to be dull. Take Canada's glow-in-the-dark dinosaur quarter, where a prehistoric predator lurks beneath the familiar profile of Queen Elizabeth. Under UV light, the coin transforms into a miniature museum piece, its skeletal raptor glowing an eerie blue, a playful nod to the country's rich fossil beds. Or consider Norway's pixelated beach banknote, where abstract cubes of color evoke crashing waves when tilted in the light. These aren't just functional objects, they're pocket-sized masterpieces, blending artistry with economics in ways that turn everyday transactions into moments of wonder. But there's more at work here than aesthetics. Currency design is propaganda in its gentlest form, a way for nations to whisper their values into the palms of citizens and tourists alike. Switzerland's francs showcase scientific pioneers like microscopes and DNA helixes, broadcasting precision and innovation. Mexico's vibrant pesos burst with Aztec calendars and monarch butterflies, tying modern finance to ancient civilizations and migratory marvels. Even the humble euro, despite its standardized look, lets each country's coins flaunt local heroes, from Ireland's Celtic harp to Greece's owl of Athena. These choices aren't random, they're calculated statements about what a society holds sacred. The most daring designs push boundaries further. Fiji's $7 note, commemorating its Rugby Sevens Olympic gold, features a player mid-tackle, his body arcing across the polymer like a stained glass athlete. Botswana's Pula bills shimmer with iridescent stripes mimicking the country's rainbows, a tribute to the life-giving downpours so rare in the Kalahari. And then there's the Faroe Islands krona, where delicate etchings of sheep and stormy seas are so intricate they're practically miniature landscapes. These currencies do more than facilitate trade. They tell stories, evoke emotions, and in some cases become collector's items hoarded more eagerly than spent. Yet for all their beauty, banknotes and coins have also been wielded as weapons. Confederate dollars printed with enslaved people picking cotton weren't just currency, they were declarations of racial hierarchy. Nazi Germany's occupation notes imposed on conquered territories featured stark imagery of eagles and swastikas, a daily reminder of who held power. Even today, the faces and symbols chosen for money can erase or elevate entire communities. The long fight to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill isn't just about representation, it's about rewriting whose stories matter in the ledger of history. The tension between art and control runs deep. A coin can celebrate a nation's biodiversity one moment and enforce its political ideology the next. Perhaps that's why some of the most subversive art isn't hung in galleries but passed hand to hand, hidden in plain sight. When money becomes canvas, it carries more than value, it carries vision. And sometimes the most powerful statement isn't what's printed on the bill, but who gets to decide. Money has always been a tool of control, but some currencies wear their oppression openly. Confederate banknotes didn't just fund a rebellion, they broadcast its ideology. On $5 bills, enslaved black men and women smile beneath baskets of cotton, their caricatured faces framed by bales and farm tools. These weren't accidental designs, they were propaganda, reinforcing the lie that slavery was a harmonious system. Even as Confederate armies retreated, their money kept fighting, spreading images of a plantation paradise that never existed. The message was clear: this economy, this society, was built on forced labor, and the currency itself was a receipt for that violence. Nazi Germany took this manipulation further with occupation currency. In Poland, ghetto notes bore Star of David stamps, turning money into a marker of segregation. Prisoner of war camps issued special scrip to imprisoned Allied soldiers, its flimsy paper a constant reminder of their captivity. But the most chilling examples were the Reichsbank notes printed for use in concentration camps, worthless outside the barbed wire, yet essential for buying meager rations inside. These systems didn't just exclude, they dehumanized, turning currency into a weapon of division. The oppression wasn't always so blatant. In 1950s America, banks routinely denied women accounts without a husband's signature. A widow inheriting money might find it frozen until a male relative co-signed. Credit cards, introduced as conveniences, became instruments of control issued solely to men until the 1970s, forcing wives to rely on their husbands' spending limits. Even paychecks told a story of hierarchy. Women's wages were often printed on pink paper, a visual cue that their labor was worth less. Yet wherever money has been used to exclude, people have found ways to resist. During the Civil War, enslaved individuals turned Confederate bills into kindling or folded them into freedom quilts as silent protests. In Nazi-occupied Greece, villagers revived the ancient practice of temporarily bartering olive oil and wheat directly to bypass worthless occupation currency. And when mid-century American banks shut women out, underground lending circles emerged with secret cash pools stashed in coffee cans and dresser drawers. The most defiant acts reimagined money entirely. In the Warsaw Ghetto, Jewish leaders created their own unofficial coupons, stamped with Jewish stars not as badges of shame but as symbols of communal survival. Decades later, feminist collectives printed alternative currencies with suffragettes and labor heroes, proving that money could carry rebellion in its very ink. These weren't just workarounds, they were declarations that value isn't decreed by power, it's created by people. And sometimes the most radical act is printing your own. Prison walls can't contain the ingenuity of commerce, they just force it underground. In correctional facilities worldwide, cigarettes have long been the gold standard of illicit trade, not for their smoke but for their scarcity. A single cigarette might buy 2 packets of instant coffee, a hand-drawn birthday card, or even legal advice from an inmate with law library access. The system thrives on absolute trust. Debts are honored not because of contracts, but because reputation is the only capital anyone has. When U.S. prisons began banning tobacco in the 2000s, the economy didn't collapse, it adapted. Ramen noodles became the new currency in some institutions, with flavors like chili lime trading at premium rates. This isn't just survival. It's a raw demonstration of how humans will always invent value, even when stripped of conventional tools. World War II's black markets operated on a grander scale but followed similar rules. In Nazi-occupied Paris, a thriving underground trade in ration coupons and forged papers hummed beneath the surface. A single American chocolate bar could fetch 10 times its weight in francs on the right corner, while penicillin changed hands in back alleys for fortunes. The most fascinating part, these markets weren't just about greed, they were acts of resistance. Dutch housewives traded stolen bicycle tires for information about downed Allied pilots, turning everyday objects into lifelines. Currency here wasn't just metal or paper. It was courage coded into loaves of bread hiding microfilm or coat buttons concealing compasses. Modern crypto evading sanctions carries echoes of this defiance. When Venezuela's Bolivar collapsed, citizens turned to Bitcoin mined on smuggled graphics cards, creating a shadow financial system beyond government control. Iranian traders use cryptocurrency to bypass U.S. sanctions, not as anarchists but as pragmatists feeding families. Even North Korea's infamous Lazarus Group hacks crypto exchanges not just for theft, but to fund a regime locked out of global banking. These systems raise uncomfortable questions. Is illegal money more honest? A prison cigarette doesn't pretend to be backed by gold. A black market diamond traded for passports doesn't claim moral purity. They lay bare what all currency truly is: a consensus of need stripped of pretense. This raw honesty bleeds into the psychology of spending. When money exists outside the law, every transaction becomes a calculated risk, a silent negotiation of trust and desperation. A POW trading his last cigarette for a spoon to dig a tunnel isn't thinking about interest rates, he's weighing survival. A mother in hyperinflationary Zimbabwe stacking bricks of trillion-dollar notes for a loaf of bread isn't budgeting, she's prioritizing hunger over numbers on paper. These extremes reveal what mainstream money often obscures: that spending isn't just economic, it's emotional. Every choice whispers what we value, fear, and secretly believe will keep us safe. And that's where the real rebellion lies, not in the currency itself, but in the unspoken truths it forces us to confront. When systems fail, people don't stop trading, they just find new ways to say, "This has worth to me." Whether it's a Bitcoin wallet on a smuggled phone or a can of tuna in a prison cell, the message is the same. Value isn't decreed by authorities. It's decided in the quiet moments between hands where need meets trust and money becomes something far more human. In Japan, a beautifully wrapped gift isn't just an object, it's a social contract. The country's obsession with homage or souvenir gifts turns every trip into a financial ritual. Office workers returning from vacation don't bring back stories. They arrive with boxes of regional sweets, meticulously distributed to colleagues in a delicate hierarchy. A department head might receive pricier treats than an intern, the wrapping paper's thickness signaling unspoken respect. This isn't mere generosity. It's a cultural calculus where money transforms into social glue. Even in personal relationships, cash gifts at weddings come in special envelopes called shugi bukuro. They're crisp new bills symbolizing purity and future prosperity. The act of giving matters more than the amount spending becomes a language, with every yen whispering about obligation, gratitude, or apology. Cross the Pacific to America, and you'll find a financial culture built on plastic promises. Credit cards don't just facilitate spending here, they enable a kind of temporal magic, letting shoppers enjoy goods today while pushing payment into the hazy future. The average American household carries over $6,000 in credit card debt, a statistic that would horrify most Japanese consumers, where cash remains king for daily transactions. This isn't just about financial literacy, it's about fundamentally different relationships with time and trust. Where Japanese culture often views debt as a social burden, America's credit system frames it as a tool, a way to build credit scores that gatekeep everything from apartments to car loans. The contrast is stark. One society sees money as a bridge between people, the other as a ladder to individual advancement. Language itself shapes these habits in ways most never notice. Economists studying savings rates found that speakers of futureless languages, those like Chinese or Finnish that don't grammatically separate present and future, save significantly more than those using languages with distinct future tenses, like English or Greek. The theory, when your language forces you to say, "it rain tomorrow," instead of "it will rain," the future feels more immediate, making long-term planning feel urgent rather than abstract. In Sweden, where the language blurs present and future, households squirrel away nearly 15% of their income, while Americans, with their sharp linguistic divide between now and later, save barely half that. Money isn't just numbers in an account. It's a story we tell ourselves about time, risk, and what we owe our future selves. These patterns crystallize in daily rituals. Watch a Japanese salaryman refuse a credit card at lunch, counting out exact change from a leather wallet, while his New York counterpart taps a metal card against a reader without breaking conversation. Notice how German shoppers still stack euro coins into neat piles at checkout, distrusting digital wallets, while Kenyan farmers send mobile payments with thumb presses on cracked smartphone screens. Each gesture carries centuries of history, the trauma of hyperinflation, the legacy of colonialism, the shadow of religious taboos against usury. The most fascinating rituals blur the line between finance and faith. In Thailand, shopkeepers place cash in miniature spirit houses every morning, asking for prosperity. Brazilian lottery players scribble prayers on the back of tickets before scratching them. And in India, merchants light incense on new accounting ledgers during Diwali, transforming profit into piety. These aren't superstitions, they're acknowledgments that money has never been just currency. It's a living thing, pulsing with our hopes, fears, and the unspoken rules of belonging. A Chinese business owner wouldn't dream of positioning their cash register just anywhere. It must face the wealth corner, that sacred southeast point of a room where Feng Shui says prosperity gathers like morning mist. Here, money isn't just earned, it's courted, coaxed into staying with bowls of citrus fruit, lush jade plants, and the occasional laughing Buddha statue rubbing his belly. This isn't mere decoration, it's spiritual accounting, balancing invisible energies to ensure abundance flows as reliably as the Yangtze. The rituals run deeper still. Never leave your wallet empty overnight, lest poverty take root. Always receive cash with both hands, as though accepting a fragile heirloom. Fold bills neatly, never crumple. Disrespect to currency is disrespect to the luck it carries. Halfway across the world, an Indian bride glides toward her groom, her neck bent under the weight of gold so thick it looks like liquid sunlight. Wedding gold isn't just adornment, it's armor. In South Asian tradition, these heirlooms, passed down through generations, serve as emergency wealth, a financial safety net woven into bangles and nose rings. The act of gifting gold during weddings is so ingrained that economists track marriage seasons through national gold imports. But there's magic beneath the economics. The clinking of bridal anklets is believed to scare off envious spirits, while the yellow metal itself channels Lakshmi's blessings. To sell family gold is seen as a near sacrilege, not just for its value but because it severs a celestial lifeline to ancestors. Then there's the humble coin toss into Rome's Trevi fountain, where €500,000 glitter at the bottom each year. Tourists think they're buying a return trip to the Eternal City, but the ritual's roots are far older, a pagan offering to water deities repurposed by Christians. What's fascinating isn't the wish itself, but the unspoken contract. The coin must arc over the left shoulder with the right hand, or the deal with fate is void. Similar superstitions thread through global cultures. Brazilian lottery players kiss tickets before scratching them, transferring luck like a contagion. Russian sailors refuse to whistle indoors, fearing they'll whistle away their wages. Even Wall Street traders have rituals, lucky ties on IPO days, avoidance of the number 4 in Asian markets where it sounds like death. These practices reveal a truth that balance sheets ignore. Money has never been just a tool. It's a character in humanity's oldest stories, a bridge between the practical and the divine. When a Thai shopkeeper tucks a banknote into a spirit house at dawn, or a Jewish family hides cash before Passover to symbolically sell their leavened bread, they're acknowledging money's dual nature, both earthly and mystical. The rituals persist because they answer a primal need, to believe we're not entirely at the mercy of markets, that some incantation, whether a gold necklace or a fountain toss, might tilt fortune in our favor. And so the coins keep flying, the gold keeps gleaming, and the wealth corners stay meticulously arranged, because deep down we all want to believe that money isn't just numbers, it's a language the universe might understand. Your wallet is more than a storage pouch for cash, it's a cultural X-ray, revealing everything from your politics to your paycheck. Take something as simple as payment methods. In certain circles, pulling out a sleek metal credit card signals affluence, while fishing crumpled bills from a threadbare wallet, it might unintentionally broadcast financial strain. In South Korea, where digital payments dominate, paying with cash can mark you as elderly or suspiciously old-fashioned. Meanwhile, in Germany's cash-loving cafes, whipping out a card for a small purchase might earn you a side eye, as if you're flaunting recklessness with transaction fees. These aren't just personal choices, they're social semaphore flags, silently signaling where you fit in the economic hierarchy. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin crank this signaling up to a philosophical level. The early adopters weren't just tech geeks, they were libertarian true believers, drawn to code that promised escape from government oversight. A Bitcoin wallet wasn't just a digital vault, it was a manifesto, a declaration that money should belong to individuals, not institutions. Fast forward to today, and the symbolism has splintered. For some, crypto remains a rebellion, a way to opt out of traditional banking. For others, it's a speculative casino or a hedge against inflation in unstable economies. The common thread, your stance on crypto, often mirrors your trust, or lack thereof, in the systems around you. Then there's the quiet bias woven into money itself, the so-called pink tax. Across industries, products marketed to women often cost more than near-identical versions for men. Razors, shampoos, even children's toys carried gendered price hikes, sometimes as high as 15%. This isn't just capitalism at work, it's a financial fingerprint of inequality, showing how societal norms get baked into price tags. The phenomenon extends to services too. Dry cleaners frequently charge more to launder women's blouses than men's dress shirts, despite using similar labor and materials. These disparities force an uncomfortable question: is money itself gendered? The artifacts in our wallets tell equally revealing stories. In many cultures, carrying a loved one's photo tucked beside bills transforms money from cold currency into a talisman, blending practicality with sentiment. Japanese amamori small embroidered amulets often share purse space with yen notes, meant to attract prosperity. On the flip side, the rise of minimalist digital wallets, stripped of everything but payment apps, reflects a growing desire to declutter not just physically but psychologically, to untether from money's emotional weight. Yet for all these personal nuances, one truth remains: Every financial choice we make leaves a footprint far beyond our bank balances. The next time you tap a card or hand over cash, consider what else you might be trading, not just goods, but identity, values, and even the planet's future. Because money isn't just about what you spend. It's about who you are and what you're willing to carry both in your wallet and on your conscience. Money leaves footprints far beyond our wallets sometimes. Those marks are carved into the earth itself. Consider the humble coin. A single penny might seem insignificant, but multiply it by the billions minted annually, and the environmental toll comes into focus. Producing 1 nickel consumes enough energy to power a laptop for 3 hours, thanks to the mining, refining, and stamping processes. The U.S. Mint alone guzzles over 35 million kilowatt-hours yearly, equivalent to electrifying 3,000 homes while pumping out thousands of metric tons of greenhouse gases. And coins aren't alone. Paper bills, though less energy-intensive, rely on cotton farming, which devours water and pesticides, followed by high-security printing facilities running around the clock. Even the ink carries a hidden cost. Specialty anti-counterfeiting dyes often contain toxic heavy metals, leaching into waterways during production. Then there's Bitcoin, the digital contender with a carbon footprint rivaling small nations. A single transaction burns through the same electricity an average household uses in 6 weeks, thanks to the energy-guzzling proof of work system that secures the blockchain. Miners' servers, often powered by coal plants in regions like Inner Mongolia, solve complex puzzles not to advance science but to validate trades, consuming more power annually than Sweden. The irony is palpable. A currency designed to escape traditional banking now rivals the very institutions it sought to replace in environmental harm. Yet solutions are emerging from unexpected places. Sweden, already a leader in cashless living, has turned even its dwindling cash supply green. Armored trucks delivering krona now run on biogas made from cow manure and food waste, slashing emissions by 90% compared to diesel. The Riksbank, Sweden's central bank, is experimenting with biodegradable polymer notes embedded with seeds currency that could literally blossom into trees if discarded. Meanwhile, Costa Rica's eco-colons, a local complementary currency, reward recycling with credits redeemable for groceries or bus fares, turning trash into tangible value. The most radical innovations rethink money's physical form entirely. Finland's pilot program with digital tree tokens ties blockchain transactions to real-world reforestation. Every payment plants a sapling, with growth tracked via satellite. In Amsterdam, the circular Economies talks system pays residents in colorful tokens for community gardening or insulating homes, spendable at local sustainable businesses. These models don't just reduce harm, they actively heal, transforming currency from an ecological liability into a regenerative force. As we stand at this crossroads, one question lingers: can money evolve beyond scarcity, not just of resources but of imagination? The answer might lie in the next frontier, where value isn't mined or printed but cultivated like a garden. Imagine a world where no one starves because food is as abundant as air, where robots handle all labor and energy flows endlessly from fusion reactors. This is the post-scarcity dream, a future so rich in resources that money becomes obsolete. Star Trek's Federation famously operates without currency, where replicators materialize any object on demand, and starships explore the galaxy purely for knowledge, not profit. Captain Picard once explained it simply: the acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. But how close are we really to this utopia, and what would it mean for the cultural fabric woven through centuries of monetary exchange? Universal basic income offers a stepping stone toward this vision. Trials from Finland to Kenya show that when people receive unconditional cash, something fascinating happens. Artists create more, students study longer, and entrepreneurs take bolder risks, not because they must, but because survival no longer hangs over every decision. The idea isn't new. Thomas Paine proposed a citizen's dividend in 1797, arguing that land and resources belonged to all humanity. Modern UBI experiments suggest he might have been onto something. In Namibia, villages piloting basic income saw crime rates drop and school attendance soar, proving that financial security can shift behavior as profoundly as any cultural tradition. Yet post-scarcity's most radical claim is that money itself might vanish. If 3D printers can manufacture homes and lab-grown meat feeds millions, would we still need dollars or Bitcoin? The answer hinges on a deeper question. Is money just a tool for allocating scarce goods, or is it something more? Consider the Kung hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari, who for millennia shared meat based on complex social ties rather than trade. Their economy revolved around relationships, not ledgers, proof that human societies can flourish without formal currency. But even they had cultural currencies, stories, favors, and kinship obligations that functioned like invisible money. History warns us that abolishing money often backfires. The Soviet Union's attempt to create a cashless society in the 1930s collapsed into barter and black markets, while Cambodia's Khmer Rouge disastrously outlawed currency altogether, triggering famine. These failures reveal a paradox. Money isn't just a medium of exchange, it's a shared language of value. Without it, societies either invent informal substitutes or fracture under the weight of mistrust. Perhaps the truth lies between extremes. Money may never disappear entirely, but its role could transform beyond recognition. Already, platforms like Wikipedia and Linux thrive on volunteer labor, their currency being reputation and communal pride. Time banks let people trade hours of plumbing for guitar lessons, bypassing cash altogether. These models hint at a hybrid future where money coexists with alternative systems, each serving different human needs, some transactional, some communal, some purely expressive. As we peer into this possible future, one lesson from the past stands clear. Currency reflects what a society cherishes most. Whether it's rye stones representing communal trust or Bitcoin encoding distrust of banks, money has always been a mirror. The real question isn't whether we'll abandon money, but what new forms it might take and what they'll say about who we've become. Money doesn't just buy goods, it tells stories. Scratch the surface of any currency and you'll find a civilization's deepest truths etched into its design, its rules, even its very existence. The patterns are undeniable. Money has always been a mirror of power, bending to the will of kings and algorithms alike. When Roman emperors stamped their scowling profiles onto denarii, they weren't just minting coins, they were minting loyalty, ensuring every transaction doubled as a reminder of who ruled. Fast forward to today and the dance continues. China's digital yuan lets the state track purchases in real time, while Bitcoin's anarchic blockchain snubs central banks entirely. The tools change, but the message remains: currency is never neutral. It's a battleground where control is won or lost, one transaction at a time. Technology reshapes money, but money also reshapes us. The leap from rye stones to contactless payments wasn't just about convenience, it altered how we think about value itself. Medieval merchants hauling chests of silver would have balked at the idea of money as invisible data, just as future generations might pity our obsession with tapping plastic cards. Yet every revolution carries echoes of the past. Cryptocurrencies, for all their futuristic gloss, revive the communal trust of Yap stone money, where value hinges on collective belief rather than physical substance. The irony, today's digital wallets fulfill the same role as ancient cowrie shells, portable, scalable, and steeped in shared understanding. The containers evolve, but the human need for trusted exchange remains timeless. Perhaps money's most revealing paradox is its ability to unite and divide in equal measure. The Silk Road thrived because Chinese paper money, Persian dinars, and Byzantine Solidus found ways to converse across cultures. Yet that same money fueled empires and enslaved populations, its power structures etched into Confederate banknotes and Nazi script. Even now, a dollar bill can be a lifeline or a weapon, sanctioning nations, uplifting neighborhoods, or locking doors based on who holds it. The lesson: currency doesn't create our values, it crystallizes them. What we choose to honor or exploit becomes embedded in its very fibers. Think of money as civilization's diary, its pages stained with triumphs and transgressions. Spanish pieces of 8 carried the sweat of Potosi's forced laborers, while wampum belts held the promises of entire nations. Modern currencies are no different. Norway's pixelated banknotes whisper of Nordic design pride, just as India's demonetization scars reveal the trauma of sudden distrust. Even the act of hoarding or spending carries cultural DNA. German cash stashes echoing Weimar hyperinflation fears, Kenyan mobile payments leapfrogging colonial banking legacies. As we stand at the threshold of AI-driven currencies and interstellar economies, one truth endures: money is humanity's most honest fiction. We agree to believe in slips of paper, lines of code, or even glowing dinosaur coins because they let us tell stories about who we are. And just like any story, it's ours to rewrite. The next chapter might unfold on blockchain ledgers or Martian mining colonies, but the pen will always be in our hands, ready to inscribe new values, new trust, and new possibilities into whatever form value takes next.